Okay, for the purpose of the camera, can you just start by telling your names and titles?
Mitch Sava, CEO of Polywonk.
David Wilcox, socialreporter.com.
David, can you just summarize what you were talking about today?
Well, I was fascinated by Mitch's policy process, which laid out the way in which policy options are developed and taken through the whole process, and how you map that against the way in which you encouraged more consultation and engagement. What came out, and then thirdly, about how you introduced online media into that. What came out, I think, was the old lessons where you can't choose the tools, whether online or anything else, until you've figured out what's the context, is it trusting, what are you trying to achieve by it, who are the stakeholders, how much engagement you're prepared to offer, can you cope with the responses out of that. But the problem is people keep jumping to the tools, and it's no good government thinking this is all terribly difficult and manpower intensive and thinking technology will fix it, because technology will potentially make it worse, because either it will give you so much stuff you can't cope with it, or people will figure that the technology is a potentially terrific way of influencing, and they'll use it to be much more disruptive than they have in the past.
Okay, and on to you. Just a lot of people have said that what's come out of this meeting is that they think the government needs to take a step back and just kind of give more control to the citizens. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that to a certain degree. The issue is that the bureaucracy that exists has existed for a long time. The processes that exist with regards to creating policy have existed for a long time. And there's reasons behind those, and there's certain factors and there's certain realities with regards to how policy is made and how people are engaged. I think there is a widespread acknowledgement now that there are mechanisms to engage the public, to engage the citizenry more actively, and I think there's a growing belief that the government can and should be applying those sorts of tools. The big problem, the big question is, you have this conflict of the old world and the new world coming together. So even if there's motivation there and interest, there's nonetheless, how do you plug this system into these mechanisms or these new principles? Even putting technology aside, if we think through Web 2 as being principles of co-creation and user-generated content, those notions are somewhat antithetical to the way bureaucracies kind of operate. And so how do we plug those things together? And I think today was an interesting beginning to those sorts of discussions.
And it's all very well getting together and having a discussion, but what do you think is going to come out of this meeting?
Well, I was playing back in a piece of work we did a couple of years ago with Ministry of Justice, as it now is, which commissioned us to develop a workshop game to enable policymakers and participants to play through exactly these issues, to take a real or fictitious scenario and think through what we're trying to do, etc., and what methods we use. And if we did that, what happens? What's the story? What's the crises? What's the this, that, and the other? So I'd like to chuck that back into the pot. That was one interesting thing. The other thing which came out from a discussion with Mitch was as he was saying, trying to map these very complex and difficult engagement processes onto traditional policy process is potentially a bit of a nightmare. And honestly, it's not working. The reason it's not working is because people are saying it's not worth saying anything because we don't believe you'll listen. And the poor policy people are saying, we can't listen, there's too much noise going on. So you've got to break out of that. I think one way of breaking out of it is to focus back on our elected representatives and for them to have two roles, their traditional elected representative role, but also their participative role. Help them become facilitators of participative processes. And look at what the Obama campaign did, and look what local councils and some MPs are doing with media. But it's not just about the technology, it's about a preparedness for them to have their own voice in public, to stand up and be counted, and directly engage conversationally with people.
Brilliant, both. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.